Welcome to Two Queens and a Joker, my narcissist ex and me. My name is Brenda. Sarah and I each had a relationship and children with the same narcissist. We both have found our way out and found our way to a meaningful friendship with each other, trauma bond and all. We hope to share our stories so you know you're not the only one who has endured the crazy-making experience of being with a narcissist. Two Queens and a Joker, my narcissist ex and me, is sponsored by the Narcissistic Abuse Recovery Center, where we provide therapy, classes, and support groups for people healing from narcissistic abuse. Contact us at www.narctrauma.com. Welcome back to Two Queens and a Joker, my narcissist ex and me. I am Brenda.
I'm Sarah.
So today we're talking about a part of healing that doesn't get enough attention.
I think grieving the dream, you're struggling with losing the person you thought you were and the person you thought he was for so long.
Yeah, the person that you thought you were. That I didn't even think of that, how much that plays a role.
Yes. Well, grieving him, the Joker, you fall in love head over heels, no questions asked. You don't question anything. He walks on water. Whatever comes out of his mouth is music. It's just beautiful. He can do no wrong. And slowly, as that starts to fade and it changes your perspective and how you see things, it makes you sad. You grieve the person that you thought this person was, because that's the person you fell in love with. That's who you put all your focus into, your time, your devotion, your heart, your mind. And to find out that that's not the person they are, I don't think you ever get over that loss of that, because you lost a human being and replaced with this evil, I don't want to say person, it's replaced with this thing that you can't wrap your head, and you lose yourself while you've lost the love of your life. What you thought was the love of your life. The picture in your head did not turn out to be what this person is in reality.
Yeah, that's so true. That is it's so hard to wrap your head around. How do you grieve something that didn't exist? And I think this is where people just get so tripped up in this whole process is this grief, and what does it mean? And, it's one thing to go to a funeral and have that ceremony of a life ending, but how do you grieve somebody who's still alive, who isn't who you thought they were? I mean, it's just so complicated, and you have to just let the complication exist. You can't fight it. I think if you fight it, you'd never get through it.
And I think that's another reason a lot of women go back to that same person.
Yes.
Because we still believe in that dream, that vision. We believe that's who they are. So even though they can consistently show you over and over again that they're not that person, they'll show it to you for a short time, a spark, and you're like, that's who I fell in love with. That's who I gave my heart to. That's the man I had children with. And you're losing not your life, but it's like a life, because
dreams,
yes, because you are starting to recognize that everything you thought was real in this relationship was a costume. It's a drama for this person. And that's a hard thing to come to realize, is you're not in a relationship with this person who values you, who values your opinion, who values your thoughts, who wants to be there for you no matter what. You're that person. You take whatever they say, and it might not be exactly what you think, but absolutely, I'm there for you, and I'm going to value you, and I'm going to support you, and I'm going to be there. And you learn that that's not reciprocated.
Right.
And it's hard.
It is.
At least it was hard for me, because you don't think another human being, let alone the person you're in love with, that you literally gave yourself to, would use you, manipulate you, lie to you, abuse you for himself, to the betterment of himself,
With no regard.
matter what it doesn't regard you at all, does not even think about you in this whole process. It's how it affects him, how he will be perceived, how his outer image will be perceived from friends, family, strangers on the street.
That's more important than anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, but just when you got that little spark and he brings it for however long, and you're like, oh my God, there it is. And it restarts your grieving process.
It does.
And I think because we're brought up in to fairy tales. That's who they are. You got to believe the good in everybody because nobody's bad. Unfortunately, we learn with this type of situation that people are bad.
Yeah.
And they are out for
Intentionally.
themselves. And
Yes.
that's somebody that you loved and trusted and gave everything to of your own self, and they don't value it one
Right.
iota.
Right. Right. Well, I think what you just said too, that you go through this grieving process. I mean, even when you're out of the relationship, and then you have these, especially shortly out of the relationship, when they're trying to love bomb you and pull you back in, kind of hoover is the word for that, when they're just everywhere around you trying to bring you back in. Yeah. Yeah, the vacuum, right? Some people don't understand that that's from the vacuum either, which is funny to me because that just makes me feel
That
old.
just says how old we are.
But that's what it is. It's hoovering you back in to try to, bring you back to the relationship and into, how they want you to be. But that's when they show that face again, with the mask on, and they're showing this good side and the love bombing and all of that stuff. And that gives us the glimpse of what you just said, that person that I was so madly in love with. And same with me. I thought he was the love of my life too. And when he would show up after we were apart with that mask on again, back then I had no idea what was going on, but now in hindsight, I do. I would be like, yeah, that's him. Like, I do need to get back together with him because he still gets me and loves me and like nobody else ever has, and blah, blah, blah. Oh, I just gagged myself.
On and on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've done that.
You're right. But especially when you're shortly out of it, I mean, even a couple years, and you see that little glimpse of who that person was, it really takes you back into that whole way of thinking again, right? That he really does exist. When he doesn't, that version of him doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, you guys were not together for such a long period, and then he was able to snowball you into a friendship again. And it took a while to show his true colors of who he was again.
Yeah.
Because we want to believe. We don't want to think what we thought was wrong.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How
We want to believe that they truly cared about us. Yes. I look back at my friendship with him during those years too, and I think all of the time that I spent on the phone talking to him, thinking we were having like these really meaningful conversations. And a lot of times it was just about like what was going on in the world, or who knows? A lot of it was about his job. That should have been a red flag because it was mostly about him, and my job was equally interesting at the time.
Absolutely.
To me, anyway. Looking back at all of that, is he could have been talking to nobody on the other end of that phone. Sometimes he was. I would just get sick of it and I would just go do something else. Although I did learn that trick from him, but I would just kind of tune out and just be doing my own thing, because he would just go on and on and on and on about himself and his own whatever's happening in his world.
His achievements, what he's done for the betterment of the department.
Yeah, and Habitat for Humanity. And we stood out on the corner with the fireman boots collecting money, and he's so great. Yeah, bullshit. All bullshit.
It's a great persona. He has a great persona. Mm-hmm. The outside world. He does.
Did. Yeah. Not anymore, I don't think. A lot of people have seen his true colors. That just reminded me of something when he was in the hospital. So you guys weren't talking, and I think this might have been right around the time, might have been the same day that I was there, and he had gotten the divorce papers, or maybe I can't remember.
The restraining order paperwork.
Yeah, it was that. I went to go visit him when he was in the hospital, and all he could talk about. So this man's life has completely crumbled, right? He's lost you. He's lost the kids. My kids really didn't talk to him at all anymore either. All he could talk about was that one of his fireman friends came in to visit him, and when the person left, I can't remember who it was, but the person left, he could see through, like, there was a mirror that he could see the person's reflection in when he was out in the hallway. And he saw that person standing against the wall, like with his head, like kind of overwhelmed with what he just had seen with the Joker, because he had destroyed himself so dramatically. That's all he could talk about, was how this man that he worked with had such a deep reaction to the state of affairs that the Joker was in at that moment. And I thought, you got a restraining order from your wife. You're not speaking to your kids. You've been in a hospital now at this point for about 3 weeks, and this is your focus. I mean, it's lovely that somebody cared about you, but how many times do you have to tell me what you saw in the reflection? I get it. He was sad that he saw you in this state.
Yeah. I got a lot of phone calls from concerned firefighters, concerned friends that didn't know the home life situation. And I contacted them. I kept everybody in the loop that I could. I mean, I contacted you and the kids, and I contacted his brother. I contacted people from the department he worked at, his friends from childhood, and let them know what was going on. But what we were going through, I didn't let anybody know about the restraining order. I was just myself and my children. But that, like I said before, that was a tough decision to do because it shouldn't have been, but it was a tough decision to make.
It was still early in all of this. It makes sense.
Yes, very much so. Like my son put it really much into perspective. We were sitting down one of the nights and he said, do you want this person? Would you let this person come back into our lives to abuse us again?
And
And
that
for your
was
child to say that to you, it broke me. It broke me. And the next day I went and filed. I know a lot of people are upset with me about it because the Joker was in a bad state. Absolutely. Most people don't recognize or want to admit he did it to himself.
yes, he did.
Yes, he had a problem, but you can't blame your problems for the life that you've created, for your situation. We are adults.
Yeah.
We teach our children to be held accountable for their actions. I don't know at what point we're not supposed to hold ourselves accountable when we're adults, or how that enters someone's mind that it was okay what I put my family through because I was going through depression or, abusing drugs, whatever it was, or whatever the situation. It's never okay.
That's never okay.
Never.
Well, I'm not sure how much of this you know either. So we've talked about his addiction a lot, and I don't mean to harp on it, but I just wanted to relate the narcissism to it too, because the people that he has always idolized since I've known him were, at first it was Motley Crue. That was his favorite band when he was young, and like Tommy Lee was the drummer for Motley Crue. That was his idol. He could not admire that person more than he did. And then as time went on, it was different bands over the years, and as a musician, that makes sense. Of course, he's going to identify with, famous people who are talented and do that. But there was, as this addiction, I think it was when it was just the pain pills, maybe, and who knows, maybe the heroin had started already too. He developed almost an obsession with Scott Weiland from,
Yes.
I can't remember the name of the band. Everyone knows who he is, I hope.
Well, he had a couple. He had a couple bands, but yeah,
That's true. And Lane Staley from
we're gonna hate ourselves later.
the Rooster song. They sing that. Anyway,
Yes.
they're kind of both grunge bands, sort of. Well, certainly Lane Staley's band was a grunge band. But why can't I think of the name? I feel so dumb. Anyway, I'm not going to harp on that. He was obsessed with Lane Staley for a while, and Lane Staley was going through this. He was going through his own heroin addiction and this decline, and then eventually overdosed and died. And I think the same thing happened to Scott Weiland. Maybe, right? Am I thinking
Yes.
the right person? Scott Weiland?
Yes, you are.
That happened not that much longer, but the Joker was obsessed with both of these men. And it was looking back at it, and even during the time, I thought that was really weird. And you guys had gone up to Seattle.
Yes.
And he wanted to go to the place that Lane Staley would visit. And there's like some connection to there, and people knowing like that his addiction was really bad and he had lost a lot of weight, and people at this, I don't think it was a bar, but my whole point to this is that he was idolizing these people that had heroin addictions and later OD'd. And it's almost like he purposely followed in their footsteps because he thought that was the cool thing to do. And it's almost like a 4-year-old, like,
Yes.
oh, this is what my favorite Power Ranger does, so I'm going to do it too. Right. It just was so remarkable to me, even during that happening. And then watching, like, I hadn't talked to him for a while when you called and said he was in the hospital and we didn't think he was going to make it. And I went to the hospital to see him because I thought that was the last time I was going to see him. And he was horrible. I mean, he looked horrible. I can't even, but the even worse part was the way he was talking to the hospital.
The man who, I'm so sorry, that he was so into his looks and his appearance. And I mean, he couldn't step outside to get the mail without fixing his hair, putting on the right clothes. What he did to himself.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Yeah.
It was scary.
It was. And to idolize that lifestyle the way he did. I mean, my impression, and I've worked in addictions for many years, is that people aren't super happy that they ended up like that. They're not thinking, oh, this is the epitome of my coolness in life. Right. But he seemed to think it was. And maybe that was the way in his mind it brought him close to greatness in his mind.
Well, he told me that he didn't have a problem. I was crazy. He had everything under control. They wouldn't prescribe it to him if it
Yeah.
wasn't safe.
Right.
You know, me saying, well, they prescribe you a certain amount for so many days. You're only allowed to take this many in a day. This is for 30 to 31 days. Can't be out of medication after 10 days or less. And it was an exuberant amount of pills. And when he ran out of his pills, he progressed on to other stuff. I didn't know about the heroin for a very long time. That's clouds, whatever, over my eyes, curtains. I just didn't want to believe it. You think it and you don't want to believe it.
Yeah. Of course not. Who would want to believe that? I mean, all of the stuff that he did, there's no reason that you would have even suspected that, right? It doesn't make sense for who he presented himself to be at the time, especially, but to lose everything that he lost because of it. Who would ever think that someone would put all of their livelihood and their family at risk like that? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. But the idolization of that lifestyle is the thing that, again, like you said, he's been so vain, so incredibly vain, right? How do you idolize something that made him lose all of his teeth?
Yes.
How is that appealing?
I think he just got so deep in it and just I truly believe he ended up just not having any hope. You know, I think at one time before everybody started filling his head as, oh, you have a problem, it's not your fault, before all that bullshit started, he might have had like an aha moment of, I really fucked up my life. Why am I doing this? Why can I not recognize what I'm doing to myself? And it went to the wayside just as quickly as the aha moment came for him. And he went right back.
Yeah, because he found an excuse. He found something else to blame it on and not have the accountability.
Well, then it's not his fault anymore.
Exactly. Yeah. People are telling him, oh, an addiction. I mean, it's a tricky thing to talk about because I think truly there's reason people become addicted to substances.
Addiction
There
is
are.
a bitch. It absolutely is a bitch. We've lived it. Kids have lived it. We don't have the same compulsion to do that. And I don't know if that's genetics, upbringing. I don't know what it is in the world, but and people can be upset with me for saying this. You are held accountable for your actions. I don't care what the reasoning is. There's no reason. You are held accountable.
Yes.
Nobody has a perfect rosy life. Nobody.
No.
So it is what you choose to do with that. You want to dwell in it. You want to make excuses for yourself, or do you want to better yourself and be the human you want to be? Is up to you.
Yeah.
Saying the struggle for addiction is not real. It absolutely is real. But you use that knowledge to better yourself, not recognize what you have done.
Exactly. And then use it as a crutch or a weapon to make me or you the bad guy because we are not giving enough credit to his addiction. Nonsense.
His one of his firefighter friends, he had called you as well, was very upset with me when the restraining order was in place. It was temporary. I think it was supposed to be getting out of, I think at that time it was UCSD, and I was paying through my insurance for recovery center in Maryland. There was a 3 or 4 day gap from him being discharged to flying on the plane to get into Maryland. And I, again, now was the bad person because this friend called me and said, and supposedly my friend as well, called me and said, I'm a horrible human being because I will not help. I will not bring him back into my home in front of my children for 4 days for him to get to rehab. And my answer after the crying and was, no, there's a restraining order, 1, and 2, he can stay with you. He can be and I said that. I said, he can be in front of your children.
Yes.
He can be in front of your wife. If you don't value myself or my children, that's fine. But I'm not bringing that person back into this home to give him the opportunity. No.
Hey.
You can take him into your home and you can house him for the 4 days or whatever, how many days it was on. But yeah, and I remember there was a couple phone calls to other people trying to get me to do it. And
really?
Guns. Yeah, there was a few. Some of them, like it was a brand new thing. Like they're like, oh, he just told us that there's a restraining order. We didn't know about it. Is it true? And I said, I don't want to talk about that kind of stuff. If you want to talk to me about getting to rehab, We can talk about that. If you want to talk about getting him more help, we can talk about that. Because never at one time did I say I would not help him in his road to recovery, but I would not let him have access to myself or our children. I could not risk that again.
No.
People that haven't been through our situation or know our situation, they don't understand that. They understand that this man is in a predicament, which he absolutely was in a predicament. And it was supposed to be my responsibility to put aside my children's and myself's fears and anxiety and take care of him. And I think by the third or fourth phone call, I finally said, and I wish I could remember which fireman it was. And I said, you know what? He was my responsibility for 10 plus years of going through this. We had been together for 20. I'm sure that there was probably longer with the different addictions that we have been through and the different helps that we have gone through. I can't do that to myself and I can't do that to my children anymore. So
fair enough. Yeah. If they even knew just what the kids had been through, that would have been enough, but much less what he had put you through and the kids, which we've talked about in other episodes. If they had known any of that, first of all, people should realize they don't know the whole story, right? They got his woe is me side and that's it. And then I think too, I think this was my problem with him and why I even kept a friendship with him for so long is because I mentioned this before, like, first of all, I thought I have 2 kids by 2 different fathers. I need to make it work with him in our relationship. So I put up with a lot that I probably still would have put up with it because I just wasn't strong enough to know better or whatever, my own issues that played a role in that. But there's this expectation that, well, that's your husband or that's your mom or that's your blah, whatever. And you just show up and you do it. And at what point do you say, no, you don't get to stomp all over me anymore? No matter what you've done to yourself.
It's a hard lesson. And to finally come to that point, it killed. I mean, it literally killed me. I cried myself to sleep that night because I felt like a horrible human being. How could I not let this person who's going through what he's going through stay at the house for a couple of days? What's a couple of days? You know,
he probably would have never left. He probably would have never gone to treatment.
We had done treatment before and it would last a day or two, you know, and there was always an excuse of why it wasn't working and why he couldn't stay sober or at this facility, it was just easier. I can buy drugs at that facility. And I'm like, okay. And 10 years of that, it takes a toll. It takes a toll. And I chose at that moment to choose my kids. I chose my kids and I'm going to stick to it. And people can hate me for it. And I'm okay with that. If you want to hate me because I chose my kids' safety, their sanity, their mental health over the Joker, hate me. I'm okay. I can take your hate and I'll take it with a smile.
Yeah. Yep. Show me who you really are. You know, going back to grief, I think that's a big part of the grieving process too, is that when you separate from especially if it's a partner, obviously, and you separate, you do see friends starting to take sides or back away or whatever it is. So there's also grief related to that as well.
Absolutely.
And that's hard. I mean, on top of the grief you're feeling, and then also for you to see your husband go from who you thought he was to a drug addicted person, probably sleeping on the streets at times. I mean, it's just, how do you wrap your head around the reality of that too? So there's just so much of this fog going on in your brain about who this person is and what you thought, again, you know, what you thought your future might be and who you thought he was all along. It's so hard to wrap your head around. And this is where people in recovery from narcissistic abuse get so tripped up because it is so confusing and it's way easier to go back into the fog and pretend that none of this is happening, right? And
it would hurt less.
It would hurt. That's what people think. It will hurt less. If I just keep the status quo, at least I know that pain, right? Yeah. Going through this grief cycle, it is where I see people drop out of therapy. When they bump up against this, it's where it's too much. I can't do this. You know, luckily most people come back, but I've seen people get back with their partners, you know, get back into the situations, go back and move back in with their parents. If it's their parents that are narcissistic, it's just, it feels easier in the moment. Yeah. It's so sad.
It's the devil, you know.
Yeah. That's it right there.
Yeah.
Quite literally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's sad because to reach the point where you have to choose is hard. It's hard. And your grief is telling you one thing, like, this is the man you love. This is the father to your children. Again, you had that picture of who he's supposed to be, and the whole outside world has that picture. So you have the influences of the friends calling and family members that don't know. The grieving will continue until we come to that point where we choose ourselves.
Yes.
We choose ourselves and we choose our children.
Yeah. Well,
And that's a tough choice at least it was a really tough choice for me.
Yeah. Well, that's common from what I see too, and my own experience with him. It's going to get better. This is a phase. This is going to pass. It's going to get better. And it never did. It never did. He just went on and victimized you. Yeah. Whoever else he could victimize, whoever he could get his hands on. But yeah, that grief, I think, is a whole other level too. And telling me as a therapist, telling clients, you have to walk through the grief to get past it is not something people want to hear either. So why am I in therapy if I still have to feel all this pain and have to deal with all of this? Well, that's how
we have to learn how to grow. We have to learn how it affected us. So in the future, we won't go through it again.
Absolutely.
So we will be a stronger individual. Got to push through the pain of reliving so we can live.
Beautifully said. I don't know that it's going to get any better than that statement, Sarah.
We hope listening to our stories helps you know that you're not alone, you're not crazy, and you're not to blame. Please join us for our next episode where we'll share more about our healing journey and how we each got out and are staying out.